And on this week's edition of our Veranda Talk segment, I am happy to welcome two of my favorite people in the world. They're two of my media compadres in the South Florida scene, Xavier Murphy and Ian Hamilton. And y'all know Xavier because we're always on his platform. That's where we live, right? On our live show with Jamaicans.com. He's the founder at Jamaicans.com, and Ian is the founder at SFLCN.com, which stands for South Florida Caribbean News. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and let's jump right into it because, we play very well together. And, as people know, generally how we like to think is that if people are in the same industry, they must always be competitors and fighting against each other. And we don't live like that, right? There's a mission that we are all aiming towards to educate our Caribbean community, to uplift our Caribbean community. And so I'd like to start there. And Xavier, I'm going to start with you and ask you to just share what the mission of Jamaicans.com is and who is the audience you serve. I know you don't only serve Jamaicans, but talk about it from your perspective.
So from our perspective, our mission is to showcase Jamaica and Jamaicans, whether it be to friends of Jamaica, Jamaican folks, first generation Jamaicans, second generation Jamaicans, or just people in general who is interested in Jamaica. We do cover some Caribbean announcements, news, showcase other Caribbean folks, but in general, our main mission is to showcase Jamaica and Jamaicans.
Awesome. All right. And then Ian, same question to you at SFLCN.com. What is your mission and who is the audience that you serve?
So our mission initially was to target the Caribbean American community here in South Florida and beyond. We treated the site as more or less a resource for our growing Caribbean American South Florida, and I say beyond because with the web, you are no longer just based here physically, and we have viewership, readership worldwide, and we just really tap into the greater Caribbean American community as a large, because based on census data, we could see here, for example, in South Florida, that 50% of the Black population is of Caribbean American descent. So we want to pride ourselves in reaching that growing audience.
So everybody has a different perspective. What was the need that you recognized, aside from the mission that you just spoke about? What was the need that you were trying to fulfill, or did you kind of just start it as a hobby? And I'll start with Ian this time.
So when I started it, I looked at it from the standpoint that mainstream media was not covering Caribbean American news and information. And there were a lot of folks in the community that was looking for a resource. And I look at a media blend. We had the traditional radio stations. Something happened in our community this minute. Where would you go to find that information? Would you have to wait for one of the radio programs to broadcast it? And unless on mainstream media, unless somebody got shot and killed, which we don't really cover, it's very rare that you're going to find them talking about something in our community from a positive perspective. So we just basically said, you know what, we wanted to create a medium in real time where folks can find that news information about Caribbean Americans.
Okay. All right. And Xavier, what was the start for you? What was the inception? Why did you?
Oh, wow. I don't want to seem too dated and old now, but when we started 25 years ago, I was only 5 at the time.
Of course.
But when we started 25 years ago, what had happened was the internet was just starting, as we know, the World Wide Web, I should say, was just kind of starting out. I was fortunate enough to be working for what we call an electronic marketing company back then that marketed on AOL, Prodigy, and CompuServe. So yes, again, I was 5 years old. Some of you don't know any of those companies. And so we started marketing on the World Wide Web. And when I did a quick search on the World Wide Web for anything typed in the word Jamaica, again, I don't even want to say the search engine, Alta Vista, I think it was.
What
But
is
when
that
I did
even?
it, again, I was 5 years old. I'm just gonna stick to that story. Um, but I looked out on the web at that time. There were only two websites that were out there that had anything on Jamaica. So out of that, I said, listen, I'm already in the industry. I already had some content because I used to have a print publication prior to that called Enough Respect, which used to circulate throughout South Florida. So I just said, let me start moving some of the print over to the web, and over 30,000 pages later, here
My
we
Lord.
are.
I feel like a sprat in your company. So, so each of you has an ecosystem that has been created based on what your platform is. Xavier, I know, you know, since you were around since the dinosaur days, as we said, you perhaps have a broader base footprint than the others of us. Yours includes newsletter on every single social media platform. Talk about the various ways that you reach your audience and who you're picking up on each of these different platforms, because I imagine it's different people for each one.
Yeah, I think the demographics are different from each one. For each one of these platforms. For example, you know, we're on Pinterest, and Pinterest folks, you know, they love recipes, they love antidotes, and so on. We're on, you know, Facebook, Twitter, you know, Instagram. We have a podcast. We're on YouTube. So we try to get to, you know, all the audiences, knowing that every audience, not every, you know, every piece of content does not appeal to each, you know, of the audiences. So you kind of have to tailor what you send out to each audience, and you have to create content that reaches each of these different markets and each of the audiences. And keeping that in mind, you know, it's always the goal of trying to create content that is what we call evergreen and usable, and can be, you know, maybe 10 years from now you can look back at it and say, okay, let's modify it. And also reaching a generation speaking in a language of today, because we may not realize it, but we're all changing how we absorb and how we take in content is very different than we did 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So that's always the challenge of, you know, trying to create content that reaches an audience. Plus you have a second and third generation Jamaican that they consume content very differently.
And you'll tell me every now and again that you're researching a topic or something to put on your site, and when you discover the website that has the information, you're like, oh my gosh, that's my site. It's already been there.
Yes, that's it. That's the funniest thing that happens to me probably every 2 weeks. You know, I work with my team to kind of lay out what needs to be written, and so forth. And we meet on a Monday and we talk about this. And sometimes I'm like, you know, have we ever written anything about this? I don't think we have. And then I Google it, or I go to the site, and all of a sudden, boom, it's already there. It may need to be updated some, but it's already there. And that's you know, it's one of the testimonies to the team we have and the folks that ask questions that drive the content that we created on the website.
So when we started, it's similar like what Xavier talked about. You have different touch points. And in today's market, you look at it, the newsletter serves one person that would rather get the information coming to them. So it's that push-pull mechanism. You utilize Google from a standpoint to say, well, what are some of the hot things people are always searching for, looking for, what's hot? How you create a headline. So you create the content with a solid headline that will garner people's search. So we're continuously looking for content, and we've reached a point where a lot of PR firms are now reaching out to us to say, hey, can we use your medium to our trying to reach?
So I think that's an important segue, right? Media or PR people are always reaching out to us, and the question is for me always, how do you balance the free publicity and promotion that you're giving to people, along with the need to eat and pay for this, all of the writers and the hosting services and all of the things that people just think, oh, you content is king, you need stuff, so let me just fling things at you, and really not take care to understand who your audience is or what it is that you're trying to do. You're just getting all these press releases and people saying, big up my thing now, kind of, kind of thing. So what is it that you look for when people are feeding you content? And when do you kind of draw the line and say there has to be some kind of advertising, whether that is, do you just stick on Google advertising and these kind of generic things? Or are you saying to Western Union or Grace Foods or Publix or Jamaica National, whom I've seen on all of your sites, are you saying to them, this is the audience that you want to reach? We have a grassroots audience. What is that interaction like, or that thought process in terms of monetizing and the content that you decide that you're going to include?
So what you find is, PR is, yes, a form of marketing. They will tell you, well, do they have a budget? No, you know what? We're just getting the word out. So, well, put me in touch then, and we'll have somebody on our team reach out to the folks who have the advertising budget. Because if you feel confident enough that our product is good enough for you to run PR, then we should be good enough for you to spend advertising dollars with.
And I'm going to stay with you on this one, Ian. Why is it important for everybody wants free press, right? I mean, that's why it's called earned media. But why is it important for someone to advertise with an SFLCN.com or Jamaicans.com as averse to just flinging it up on Google and it's going to get where it's going to get?
In the world of advertising, a lot just depends on what it is you're trying to accomplish. I mean, when you do the Googles and stuff like that, is it just a matter of just, hey, I got enough impressions, I'm just selling impressions? And then when I deal with a local person, a local promoter, and says, well, hey, guess what? You got 1 million impressions. Well, that's great, but I only have 2 people buy tickets. So, it's like, well, which one is it? Mix it up. But, the same way you're going to fling it and give it to Google, fling it and give me some money too.
The analogy I use, and I think you have heard this one before, Khalib, is this. Let's say you're a fisherman and you're fishing for snapper. You go out in the ocean and you're going to get grunt, which I love grunt, by the way. Don't get me wrong. You're going to get grunt. You're gonna probably get some goats, some parrot, some turbot, some whatever, and a few snappers. Now, what if somebody could tell you that, hey, there's a pond or there's an area right here where you could just get snapper, and you're not fishing around for anything else. You're not wasting your time. Throw it back. These other types of fish. You're basically getting snapper. Who is what that's exactly what you're trying to reach from a marketing perspective. This is the target audience you're reaching. And that's the difference when you use a South Florida Caribbean News, Island Origins, Jamaicans.com, or any of these these media companies that are targeted, have a targeted audience. That's what you're getting.
Absolutely. And final question of this as we wrap it up. How come we can get along? Can't we all just get along? How come we end up working together and other like-minded, let me say, organizations don't? What is the benefit of working together, as we often try to do, as opposed to just seeing each other as competition in your mind? I'll start with Xavier for this one.
Oh man, I have so many stories, but there's not enough time to tell them.
No scandal on this show, no scandal.
Yeah, I'm not going to go into any of the scandals. Let me tell you the way I see it. There is enough fish in the sea, and people have their preferences. Everybody delivers content in a different way, and which is convenient to them. If you look at, let's say, for example, look at the TV companies, the three, I know there's more now, but let's look at the three main ones from back in the days, the ABC, the CBS, the NBC. If you look at those companies and when they are broadcasting news, you will see sometimes, I said, footage coming from here or so on. These syndicates work together because they know, instead of being like this, being like this is a lot more powerful. And I don't mind saying to someone, or in fact, I don't mind sending content or a story or something that's more localized. In fact, I think I've done that with Ian before, where I said, listen, South Florida News is the the platform, and that's the way we should look at things in terms of saying, hey, everybody has a lane, and they know what their expertise is, they know what their lane is, and it doesn't stop us from working together. I'm always open to working together with different media houses.
We all know the traditional advertisers here in South Florida that touch on the Caribbean community, but and again, there's just so many more advertisers out there that you say, well, how are we them to come to us to say, well, okay, when you come to me, I may be just part of the entire ecosphere that you started a conversation about, that I would say, well, you know what, here's Khalif, she's touching a different audience within that same pond that Xavier referenced to, that says, you know what, if you're out here fishing and you want to catch a red snapper versus this snapper versus that, you know what, there's 3 different ways that you can catch bigger, better, best snapper, and you go from there. You're still getting it, but it's in different buckets, different prerogatives, different things where you can, mediums where you can touch it. So if we don't work together, you know what, the guys with more money will come in and eat our lunch and take away our market share, because you're sitting here fighting over the crumbs when there's a whole loaf of bread sitting out there someplace else. And I'd leave it at that.
I want to also is that, going back to the old guard networks, when you see a TV ad on all 3, you flip the channel and it's on there, that's a repetitive message that is going to be heard by an audience. So, you're looking for Caribbean media, you're looking, well, why not reach out to all? Okay, because you see the same ad on CBS, same ad on NBC, okay, and the same ad on ABC.
And I would agree with you both. I'm gonna say that from my perspective, I am entering an arena where I kind of leaned on both of you when we were when we were starting off. It was Island Origins as a television series on Jamaicans.com, and we interacted. I don't remember how I started with Ian at SFLCN.com, but at the end of the day, this theory of a rising tide lifts all ships, I think it applies to us, and the more we can confirm or verify to people that there is a strong Caribbean contingency. We all have our very strong audiences that, as Xavier said, our snapper, our goldfish, or whatever you want to call it. If that's what you're fishing for, let us be the outlet for that. And I will also leave it at that. And thank both of you gentlemen for joining me on this episode. Any final thoughts before we go?
I appreciate you bringing, these media houses to light. Congratulate you guys on all you're doing. This is not easy by any means. We're pulled in multiple directions, but I think we have a passion for this. And because we have a passion for it, it shows in what we do and the longevity in what we do. So congrats, guys, and thanks for having me on the show.
I would thank you for this opportunity to talk a little bit about the Caribbean market and our publication and what we do. But in essence, at the end of the day, yes, we want advertising dollars. I think the opportunity is out there. We have quality products.
And we're going to leave it there for this episode. I thank both of you for coming on, and hopefully we can continue the conversation on our websites, our social media pages, our newsletters. You need to drop this in your newsletter this week, guys. Thank you so much.
All right.
Be well.